the cutting edge hackers that we're fighting are doing and what everyone in the digital media industry can do about it. I'll begin by trying to explain why this problem is so severe. You would think that bots would not affect digital advertising to the degree that it does, because of course bots don't buy things. And as we get increasingly sophisticated in targeting advertising to the right people at the right time, you would imagine that bots, which never perform, never result in sales, would naturally get squeezed out of the system. In fact, the opposite has happened, and the key reason for this is that it is ordinary people's computers that are getting infected in order to do fraud. In fact, 3/4 of all of the successful fraud is coming from real people's computers and mobiles. And what makes that such an innovation in the cybercriminal underground is that real people browse around on the internet, they open email newsletters, they buy things, and they therefore have real authentic cookies and device IDs that are associated with purchases. So if you've infected those computers and you have a background malware process, that malware has the same cookie. It of course has the same IP address. It has the same device ID. So the fraud works not by anonymous bot hordes, but actually by looking exactly like real human beings. In fact, the most sophisticated malware also copies the behaviors of the people who have their machines infected. So the bots will only do their fraud while a real person is browsing. So then each individual bot will have a different pattern of usage. They'll go to sleep when their owner goes to sleep. They'll look realistic in terms of their usage patterns, and different bots won't all look the same because they're each copying their own human. This level of sophistication was not widely known among the digital ad industry. People had a false belief that bots should stick out because they look robotic. But over the past few years of evolution, the most sophisticated cybercriminals that are making the most money have been investing in botnets that look extraordinarily realistic and are getting false credit for the purchases that the compromised consumers make. And that is why this has added up to a multi-billion euro problem. We project losses to fraud of 5.3 billion euros this year. That's actually a small decline, which I'd like to get into because the ways in which we've reduced fraud to a certain extent point the path forward to get 5.3 down to 0. We've been working with a large group of technology platforms to clean up this industry, starting with programmatic advertising. If we can identify the bot impressions at the beginning of a bid request, then we can just cut them out of the RTB process altogether, thereby shrinking the profit potential of fake audiences in programmatic. And over the past couple of years, that has started to become successful. And ad fraud in programmatic display advertising and programmatic video advertising has started to shrink. This suggests that this is a fight that, while not won, is winnable. However, it's in the rational best interest of our adversaries to first try to fight back, and then when they start to lose, to find new victims to continue their crime. And unfortunately, that's just what we're seeing, where the money that was previously made in programmatic advertising is now being made by targeting marketers' websites directly. That's increasing the number of bot interactions on the landing pages of marketers worldwide. We found multi-million-dollar fraud just against a single large global advertiser in the banking sector. But one of the more interesting crimes that we've recently uncovered was a scam targeting a global automotive company. The automotive company is paying a lot of money to not just do brand advertising, but to actually drive traffic to their website to get people interested in their products, to interact with a configurator. What kind of model would you like, under what options, and perhaps sign up for a test drive. And what we found was extraordinarily sophisticated bot traffic showing up to this website and fully speccing out a car, and in some cases signing up for a test drive. Of course, no one shows up for that test drive, but it turns out that often people don't show up to test drives anyway. So as long as the bad guys were not too greedy, they could inflate that number of leads. And this was costing the automotive company in several ways. First of all, they were paying quite a bit of money per test drive form fill directly to a direct marketing partner. They also were looking at all of the visitors to that online configurator and IDing them via device ID, a cookie, to try to retarget them later. And so by sending bot traffic, the bots would get those bottom of the funnel cookies and would then collect a little bit more ad fraud money as the automotive company tried to retarget them across the web. So while it took a great deal of programming sophistication to elevate a bot to the level where it could select the features of a new car model and even submit some false information for a form, the money that was made by the criminals every time they did this more than paid off the programming investment. We saw the same thing in insurance with online quotes for insurance policies being filled out by bots, submitting real personal details of actual human beings that had just been bought off the dark web. And we're seeing this in all kinds of digital media publishing. So the good news is that while even the most sophisticated botnets are now possibly getting identified and we're showing winning tactics against these guys, the bad news is that they're shifting to a new set of victims. And those new set of victims, as I said, are presenting different kinds of attack surface, like the attacks against marketing websites themselves. They're also shifting geographies, and in fact, that's why I've come to Paris to talk to you today, because this is a global cybercrime. Nobody knows how to make computers unbreakable. We're all, as consumers, getting targeted by cybercriminals, and many of our devices are getting hacked. And while in some cases some of the most sophisticated models for this crime were built on the backs of victims in just particular geographies, it's a problem that is now spreading. So how does this happen? Well, the key insight of our cybercriminal adversaries is that any device that you can compromise, any mobile that you can get a fraud SDK installed on, any desktop computer that you compromise, any internet-enabled device at all, looks like it belongs to a targetable consumer from the perspective of digital advertising. So the primary money-making operation of these ad fraud botnets is to just look like there are more people browsing than there really are, more people using ad-funded apps than there really are. They're creating more ad inventory, which, first of all, harms the effectiveness of advertising every time you serve an ad to something that's not real. It also dilutes the precious inventory that comes from real human engagement. And publishers everywhere are suffering from this. They're going through the extraordinarily hard work of getting real human attention, real human engagement with their audience, and they're effectively in competition with people that are just goosing the numbers with a false audience. So this is a fight that, or this is a crime that harms, I think, advertisers that want real human engagement and the publishers that have the real thing to sell. The trouble is that it also inflates the volumes of ad traffic, which can be very good for players in the middle that just want to monetize large volumes. So I think that to fight this fight, marketers and publishers really have the same goal. They both are well served if this market is fraud-free. But those who monetize on just undifferentiated volume don't necessarily care. Volume is volume. They make money. So where do we go from here? There are a few big takeaways that I'd like to impart to you. First of all, as privacy regulations impact the way that digital ad platforms work, I think that we are empowering real human beings with more control over their privacy, which is a good thing. Unfortunately, this is also creating openings for botnets. The decreased granularity of targeting makes it easier for infected computers to hide in the noise. And the impact of privacy regulations can also have a negative impact on security controls, as one has to build in rights to be forgotten, which would be a big boon to botnet operators all over the world, and other ways of decreasing the fine-grained accuracy of differentiation between humans and bots. What can you do about this? First, if you're on the if you're in publishing or even working as an advertiser who is buying direct from publishers, you need to start getting really, really skeptical of ad networks and other ad platforms that sell traffic directly on a cost per visit basis. This is the primary funnel for bot traffic worldwide. Advertisers pay money to publishers who have a real organic audience, but are also paying third parties to get more audience. They're paying those third parties per visitor, so those third parties have every incentive to get visitors in any way they can, which turns out to be from botnets. I'd advise you to work with buy-side vendors that are pushing the industry forward. We've had great success in reducing the amount of spoofing, for instance, globally through the adoptions of ads.txt. And ads.txt would have never actually been adopted to the level that it was were it not for a handful of pioneering DSPs making it happen. Some DSPs are going the extra mile to push the industry forward, both in terms of transparency and also in the fight against fraud. And insofar as you can vote with your dollars, it makes sense to support those companies. Likewise, there are some sell-side providers that are really going the extra mile to raise the quality of inventory across the board, including the long tail, and those should be supported as well. It looks superficially as though fraud could go away if everyone just bought from a small whitelist of websites. But in fact, one of the things that makes the web great is all the small publishers, everything out there on the long tail. And it requires extra effort on the part of SSPs to gather that inventory but expose it in a high quality way. We need to support those that are doing that hard work. And lastly, I'd ask that you join an industry coalition fighting fraud. This is one of those efforts that works better collectively than individually. And as we increase our collective action against fraud, we decrease the profitability of the crime to our adversaries, which actually makes them less incentivized to try the scam at all. So the way we win is not just by defending individual buyers and individual sellers. Every time someone raises their defenses, it decreases the total possible victims out there, which decreases the absolute incentive for our cybercriminal adversaries to fund their own innovation, which is required to perpetrate the crime. So I thank you for your attention, and I look forward to working with you and seeing you across the collaboration table. Thank you.